All right. Here we are again, wasting a little time. Tonight, we're going to have a good talk about old school punk rock and learn a lot of things. I want to say a few things before we bring our guest on, which is I first learned about the Dead Boys growing up in New York City. I was a little too young to have seen them, but I remember when they were on one of their last, I didn't even say it was a tour, it was a few shows in 1987. And I remember my father had a store in the East Village, a collectible store, baseball cards and magazines. And we would pass these signs for the Dead Boys for that show. And he would explain to me how they were this, it was almost like a mythological band. You almost didn't believe it was real. And you'd hear these stories about the singer cutting himself on stage and it just made me so interested in it. And so while the Ramones were the reason I wanted to play punk rock music, when I heard the Dead Boys, I was blown away. And it was our band. If you were young, the Dead Boys Ramones was getting popular. Dead Boys was still the in thing. And it wasn't until much later, and after Sid Vader's passing, that the Dead Boys really became this big thing, and now is very well known. So in 2017, the Dead Boys made the decision to perform live again. And this was a big thing. It's quite an undertaking to fill the shoes of the late, great Sid Vader's. And in my opinion, they did an amazing job. And we're going to talk to the current lead singer of the Dead Boys, which is Jake Hout. And here he is. There he is right there.
Hi.
Yeah, so Jake, I like that you dressed up for the occasion. You know what I mean? That's the way it should be.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I put on a tie,
We're sitting at home. We might as well. Yeah. Yeah. So Jake, you're in Oakland, California right now, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Is that where you grew up?
Yeah. I moved here when I was 9.
From where?
Well, I was born in Indiana and then lived in Arizona, and I lived in Dublin, Ireland, and then moved here.
Nice. It's a eclectic background.
I went here, I went there.
Yeah. So you were a musician before the Dead Boys, obviously, and you had your own bands. And one of the things that I found interesting is that you used to have a band that was a zombie tribute to the Dead Boys. Is that right?
Yeah, that's how I got the gig. It was called the Undead Boys. It was only for Halloween, and it was really only going to be just 1 year, but it was very popular. So it became something of a tradition in the Bay Area that Undead Boys would play for Halloween and sometimes St. Patrick's Day too. And so that was how Cheetah found me.
Yeah, which is amazing. I mean, obviously you were a fan of the Dead Boys.
Yes.
How did you come in contact with Cheetah for the first time?
I had met him before when he came through touring, doing his solo stuff. I was friends with Jason Kotwitz. His band had played with my band, Everything Must Go. He was playing in Ironhead, and they had come through, and he was like, "Oh man, this is the guy that should be singing with Cheetah,"
Mm-hmm.
and always trying to convince Cheetah that, and he's like, "I don't know, I don't want some imitator," you know what I mean? Which is how he was thinking of it. But then when it came time for the 40th, he was like, yeah, he saw some videos and stuff like that, and of Undead Boys, and he was like, actually, this guy's pretty good at it. And so he gave me a call, and yeah, I had met him just as a fan, like, could you sign my record? And stuff like that. But then after that, we became really, fast friends.
Yeah, Cheetah was performing on his own, and he was singing the Dead Boys songs because he wasn't really ready to let somebody else do that, which is, understandable. Sid Vader's was this larger than life personality. This is not an easy thing to just step in and do. And I know for you, obviously you're going to get some people who are excited, and you're going to get some negativity about it. What was it like for you?
Well, I mean, it was kind of torture because it's like people were saying, no Stiv, no Dead Boys, that was like a hashtag. And of course, nobody agrees with that more than me. You know what I mean? So I was like, no, Cheetah, don't do it. Like, let's keep calling it Cheetah Chrome Band. Because at first we were just called the Cheetah Chrome Band, and so like I was more comfortable artistically with that than like really stepping into the shoes of me like, yeah, I'm the singer of the Dead Boys. You know what I mean? It's like still to this day I say that to people. Like I sang for the Dead Boys, but Stib Baders is the singer of the Dead Boys. This is a fact that cannot be erased no matter how much history comes after his demise. You know what I mean? It's like you can't change that fact. You know what I mean? So it was, yeah, obviously it was a head trip. But I mean, what was I going to let somebody else do it? You know what I mean? It's
Right.
like,
That's a great way to think of it, because somebody else would have. Yeah.
yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know,
And I just didn't want to leave that to anybody else. I know this stuff inside out, and I just, you know, it's something that, you know, I was like asleep in the back of the van, and I like half woke up and I heard Cheetah and Blitz talking about it, and they were like, yeah, but this is the thing, he's not doing it, he is it, he's the same kind of guy. And you know, it's like that was probably the most like, you know, mind-blowing, like you know what I mean, affirming moment I can think of. You know, they didn't even know I could hear them talking right then, and it's like that was the thing. It's like you needed somebody who's authentic, you know, doing themselves, but could also deliver the show, you know, and that's the thing. And it was not an easy thing to do, of course not, and a lot of controversy there, but
well, and as you know, the promoters to sell it need to call it Dead Boys, you know. So,
yeah,
and that's one of the reasons where you have to make that decision. You're going to sell a lot more shows as Dead Boys, you know. But the thing, and you've heard this a million times, but there's so many people who never got a chance to see Stib Baders, who are younger, who would love to hear that music and see someone who reflects what a Dead Boys show was like. And you know, in no way did I think you were an imitation. You were putting
yeah,
on a show, and what Cheetah said was right. You know, I'm fortunate to know Cheetah. I brought him out to Vegas to play a couple of times, and then my band, Sin City Rejects, we opened a couple of shows for you guys on that 40th tour.
right, yeah,
And, yeah, which was you know, for me was a huge honor. And
yeah,
I remember after seeing you, because I was skeptical like everyone, and I remember
sure.
going up to Cheetah and going, you did it. You know, he told me exactly what he said to you. This guy is real. This is
Yeah.
not, you know. And he goes, I would never would have done it otherwise. And so, you know, to come from him and Johnny, that's the ultimate, you know, compliment for you.
Yeah. I mean, like like when I was a kid jumping around on my bed in my socks singing Dead Boys, did I ever think like, oh, it's great, just keep it up, I'm singing for the band? Like, of course not. You know what I mean? Something like that was my idea, but of course it would have to be my own. I didn't think that it was gonna end up like that. You know what I mean? Like the whole way there. Like this is Blitz and Cheetah. You know, and that was the point. I mean, if they still got it and they still want to put that show on, somebody's got to step in to those shoes. You know what I mean? And I've been training for it all my life, whether I meant to or not, you know.
Well, I remember us watching you and saying like, I don't think this is an act. You know, I mean, I saw you before the shows and after the shows, and this is who he is, and he has this down, and it doesn't feel forced, because I could see someone go on stage trying to be an actor and doing his every move, and I never got that feeling with you. And I think people who didn't see this, maybe the people who were too cool, they'll regret it. You know, they're going to regret it, because especially now when there is no live music,
Yeah.
you know, that was as close as you were going to get to seeing Dead Boys and seeing two guys on stage and a great band. And another thing that you guys did that I really liked, Jake, was you didn't screw around. It was a short set. It was what the people wanted to hear. You didn't try to ram a new record down. Not that that wouldn't have been a good thing at some point, but to start, you just gave people what they wanted. And it was impressive.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it was a tightrope walk. You know what I mean? It was like, how do we go about this artistically that makes sense? You know what I mean? And of course, there's going to be, you know, haters that just diss us in advance, but there's going to be, kids that they never thought they'd get to see, and they didn't get to see Stib, but they get to see Johnny and they get to see Cheetah. I mean, it's like they get to see some Dead Boys, you know what I mean?
Now, were the other guys ever approached? Were Jimmy or Jeff ever considering? Was this ever involved?
Oh my!
I mean, I kind of know, but
I had no say in that.
Mm-hmm.
As a fan, of course, I was always, you know, advocating that we should get those guys. I mean, but it wasn't my call at all, and so I'm going to leave that answer at that.
Well, I think there was some bad blood between Cheetah and the other guys. And Cheetah was
people's personal business. I don't talk about that.
Yeah, well, that's why you're working.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think Cheetah, and they had some differences, and Cheetah was the core member of the Dead Boys, and it was up to him to do it. And I guess that he was okay with Johnny doing it. Now, and we'll get to that. You know, what people have to understand is you guys weren't doing glamorous touring. This is in a van, and you're playing almost every single night.
Yeah, it was punk rock. I mean, absolutely, like bars and you know, we were playing proper venues as well. We played the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We played the DNA Lounge. We played some big places, but it was like, you know, Monday through Wednesday, we were just doing bars and stuff like that. It was proper like punk rock touring. You know what I mean? Yeah, we were all in this little van, like.
And these guys are in their 60s.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, imagine. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, for you, it's probably I'm living my dream, and your life is kind of punk rock. So for you, I don't think it was that new, and not that it was new for those guys, but to do it again 40 years later has got to be trying.
Yeah, and it wasn't new for them at all. I mean, both of them have had, you know, other projects. I mean, like, you know, Batusi's, it's like, was Sylvain, and Cheetah, and that's how they did it. They did it in a little van, you know. We did get hotels at least, you know what I mean? We weren't, generally speaking, we were not crashing on floors. And for us, I mean, for me at least, I was like, wow, amazing, we're rock stars, you know. I don't have to pay for the flight. Are you kidding me? But yeah, it was a little bit, it was certainly a step down from the 70s for them, but they were, you know, they knew that was going to be the case. As they got into it, and they still did it anyway because it's still fun. It doesn't matter that, you know, you're old now and it's like, oh, society tells you you're irresponsible to do or whatever, but it's like, it's still fun. It's really, you know, great way to spend your time.
And this is an opportunity that, you know, for those guys, who knows when it's going to come around. The time was right. There's definitely a resurgence and people who want to, you know, see classic punk, especially younger people. And so you take it, you know, you go out there and you do it, and you guys did. And so part of it was you re-recorded the first Dead Boys record, and I get that most likely that was because you wanted to have, you know, a product, you know, so that you have something to have out with you, because it was pretty fast. I mean, since we joined re-recording, right?
Yeah, we weren't, it was a 40th anniversary tour, right? So it wasn't about like, oh, let's write a new album and like, you know, promote that type of thing. It was about that album, but of course you can't book headlining, you know, real like, you know, wage paying tours just off of your YouTube, you know, videos. So we needed something to help show that it was a legitimate, like that we were committed, that it was a real, you know, viable band, you know. Yeah. So we just cranked that thing out, you know. And that was a trip too, of course. Like, I'm like, oh my God, re-recording Young, Loud, and Snotty. Like I did. I probably fought against that too at the time, if I'm honest. But it's like, we needed to, you know, just as a promotional thing and a document of that new situation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and I get it that this is something some people would be completely opposed to. But I know that also Cheetah said many times that he wanted the mixes and the things to be a different way. And so for these guys, this is their chance to record the songs the way they intended.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, for them it was. I mean, not for me. I was like, what are you talking about? This is a sacred document, flaws, warts and all, you know what I mean? It's like, it's a perfect thing. My favorite album. It's like, are you kidding me? But for them, it was like, yeah, they got to play the amps they wanted to. They they were kids when they did that album. And it's like, they had the chance to like, do it. We were in Nashville. It was very, very professional this time. So It was cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Dead Boys is so ahead of its time. This is a band that, moves to New York in 1976 from Cleveland, Ohio. And, they're not around long. The resurgence is what is so amazing. And that's happening with punk because, with Sylvain just passing away, you start to think, these guys are all gone. Walter Lore passing away. I used to say to Cheetah, you should do a band called the Lower East Side Legends, and you should have, you and Sylvain. And they did do a band together, the Batusis. But Walter and that scene, these people, they're dying, and so people will not get a chance to see them. I should ask you, how is Cheetah's health right now these days?
Good these days. Yeah, I'm glad you asked. He's way off the radar and everybody's really nervous because he did have health issues, especially right after, because we were touring so much and, living hard, if I'm totally honest. And, he had some health issues after, but he's doing good now. And he's, just laying so low because it's like, the corona, he just does nothing. He hangs out with his kid and he just chills, just trying to stay out of the way of the germs. And it's like he's doing good. He's not like, he's been usually all on Facebook and Instagram, stuff like that, and he hasn't been bothering with that at all. I'm like, man, people are getting worried,
Well, yeah.
I talked to him last week. You know what I mean? I talk to him all the time. It's I call him and we just shoot the shit, and he's doing fine.
Yeah, I mean, people, and that's great because people need to hear that, because I do think because he's not fighting about politics, online or his epic battles with Ross the Boss from the Dictators, and all these. When he's not around, you worry, and because he did have some, some health problems.
He did. It's more like when he was going through that, he just stopped. He just chilled on social media, and he's just not been digging it recently. He's like doesn't really want to go on Facebook. I don't know. You know what I mean? I'm telling him, you got to get through. I mean, he lost his phone or something, and then he couldn't get his password. But okay, that. You can handle that, dude. Come on. But he just like it. He dragged his feet on it, and now he's got it all sorted out, and he's still not really doing it. I think he's enjoying the break, like some of the, I mean, I think anybody is probably, there's a side of Corona that it's like, well, this is awful, obviously, but we do get a break. You know what I mean? Where we don't the like pressure, like I should be on the road. I should be at that gig right now. I should be at seeing my friend's band and stuff like that. It's like all that fear of missing out is like put on hold for now. And I think he's just chilling and relaxing. It was pretty crazy for dudes their age, not to mention even mine a little bit, to be touring as much as we were. And so he was really tired at the end of that, but he's okay. He's like the really bad health issues that came up afterwards, diverticulitis and stuff like that, are all gone or taken care of. He took care.
Well, he's an institution, so we need to keep him around.
Yeah, and obviously when Sylvain passed, like that's what I called him and was like, "Oh man," to give my condolences, and he was like, "Wow, gee, who would have thought? Like I am among the last of the guard." It's like that is just nature and punk rock lifestyles, but he's hanging in there, and so
he lived hard. I mean, he has a book.
He was going to be one of the last standing.
I feel that way about him too. You know, but yeah, when you read his book, he's lived hard. This is a guy who.
Yeah, it's not from responsible living the whole time. Let's put it.
No, yeah. But let's talk about Johnny Blitz, the drummer, because I believe he parted ways from the project.
Yes.
Is it that he just had enough, or?
Yeah, that's long story short. He had enough. Yeah. He wasn't seeing eye to eye with management, not with Cheetah. Yeah, I still talk to him too. I call him and, we check in from time to time, and he's doing all right. But yeah, he was not seeing eye to eye with Cheetah and with management. So,
Well, and I think it's different when you're an adult and this is your legacy, and now it's a new industry. And sometimes people aren't ready for that. That people have different ideas, and it's a different world. And then to do all that touring and be in a van I'm glad that he did as many shows as he did. That was really great for you guys. Is the plan to continue Dead Boys?
I mean, people are still really interested in just like, where it would be like the Me and Cheetah show at this point. But we, and we were like, wow, looking into who would we get and stuff like that. And there was a lot of interesting names kicking around and stuff like that, and lots of people interested. But then when Corona happened, really, it's just the whole thing is
on hold.
Was folded. Like, me and Cheetah are still determined that we're going to do something after this is over. You know what I mean? He sends me songs and stuff. We're working on stuff. We want to do something, but what it will be exactly, I don't know, because there's a lot of business involved there.
Yeah. Well, at some point there'll be an audience for festivals. Maybe you don't have to go out and play every day. You could do more of the fly date type thing, because there's going to be interest in seeing Cheetah. There's going to be interest in seeing anything when the world, opens again.
Yeah. Yeah. And like we said, with the clicking the clicking clock, it's like, there's only so much longer that these original generation guys are going to be able to do this stuff. So it's kind of like I want to facilitate that as best as possible, so that, because there is so many new kids into Dead Boys and into punk rock in general, and I still want to bring that to people. Obviously, I would like it to be Blitz. I would like it to be Zero. You know what I mean? And Magnum as well, honestly. But
he's not going for it, huh?
Well, there's a whole. That's their business, man. It's not me.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, listen, I think it'd be great too. I'd love to see them work it out with you, because you've got something, that's great. And like we were saying, how many opportunities do you have to do it? And so it's great that you're a fan of the band, because you are helping to facilitate that legacy.
Yeah.
And people can go on YouTube and watch the videos. My whole thing was, when people were skeptical, not Dead Boys, you don't have to go. You can stay home. But if you're a fan of that music, this is the closest you're going to get seeing that music played, and your chance to see, legends. These are guys who are older now. This is your chance to see it, and you'll remember it. And I when we play the shows with you, I would look out and just see the younger people loving it, and I'm thinking, these are songs that I can't believe. I'm talking about every cut on the album. It wasn't just like Sonic Reducer. You guys would open with Sonic Reducer, so they knew, they knew every song. And it's funny, Sonic Reducer. I'm talking Cheetah. The royalties that he sees, because Dead Boys sampled by the Beastie Boys, covered by Guns N' Roses. There's another big one too.
Pearl Jam.
Yeah, Pearl Jam. I mean, you talk about a small band that has a big legacy.
Yeah. And for good reason. I mean, it's like, it was so unacceptable from a business perspective, and in many other ways as well. But it was so rock and roll, like it was so the real thing. You know what I mean? And that's maybe what the real initial point of punk rock was. You know, and so yeah, it takes decades to find its audience because that's how real it is. You know what I mean? And you know, it took Leadbelly decades to find his audience. It took, you know what I mean? It took all the really influential real music. It takes decades, you know, and a lot of times they don't see it. They never even see it, you know, and that's the way it goes. It's the, you know, the romance of the story of this is real ass Midwest kids, people, you know what I mean? Like doing this thing, and sure, it implodes really quickly and the record company tries to bury it and stuff, but all of that is heroic to people that are starting out and like looking at whatever Lady Gaga sing the national anthem or something and like, well, I can't do that, you know what I mean? But it's like, see the Dead Boys like, maybe I could do that though. You know,
well,
I
think that's why kids got, you know, Johnny Ramone, so Sylvain, I could probably do that. I saw Johnny Ramone and said, you know what, I think I could do that. So yeah, it is attainable, and it's much cooler than Lady Gaga too. Singing that. But now, Jake, I gotta say, Jake, I'm a little worried about you because I saw you at the shows. You definitely are. You were living it. So my thing for you is, if you should get hit by a taxi, you know to go to a hospital, right?
Yeah, I look both ways before crossing the road.
Okay, because for those who don't know, and I can't believe they'd be watching it, they didn't. Steve Baders was in France in 1990, and he was crossing the street, and he got hit by a taxi. And rather than get medical help, he went back to his hotel or where he was staying and went to sleep and ultimately, you know, passed away. So I just want to make sure, Jake, that you know.
I want to say he did go to the hospital. It took too long. They wouldn't see him. He did try to get medical help.
So now I didn't know that. That's interesting. At least
he did. He went in. It was like he was there for hours and hours, and he was like, "I feel fine." And so I want to say that in his defense. He wasn't totally irresponsible about it. Maybe I'm bursting his punk rock bubble a little bit, but he had, you know what I mean? He was thinking about it. He wasn't that irresponsible about it. It was just,
I think it's really
bad luck, you know?
Yeah, I think it's reassuring that you said it. I mean, I get you. The story is much cooler that he just
you don't care. But it's like, that's not really what happened. He cared, you know? He was like, I'm fine, you know? So
to me, he never really, even though he had this reputation in Dead Boys of being pretty wild, if he had followed his career and his solo stuff, he seemed actually like a pretty together guy and a nice guy. You know, he wasn't, Dead Boys had this reputation for being punk, but he didn't seem like, you know, this reckless, you know, there's the interviews of him with Sid Vicious. He didn't seem like that.
No, yeah, he wasn't as bad as Sid. I mean, he was reckless, like standing on top of cars and stuff like that while they're driving, and you know, he would like crawl out on the van. He wrecked the van. He was driving the van. He wrecked it and like threw himself through, you know, flew through the windshield and all these crazy stories. So he was definitely as reckless as his reputation, but he was also a fairly responsible person and a very serious artist, you know, and he wanted to communicate his ideas, and they were, you know, more intellectual than he get. There's so much tongue in cheek and irony in it that he comes off to some people at face value as this kind of dumb guy or like a simple person, you know, but there was more to it than that, you know what I mean? And he was actually, in a way, he was kind of responsible, you know what I mean? You don't get two hit bands being totally irresponsible. Sorry, kids, but that's the truth. you have to look a little more irresponsible than you actually are in order to pull it off.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you know, Dead Boys wasn't your typical punk band. These songs were much more melodic, and, you know, you had solos. It wasn't these 2-minute screaming songs. There was, there obviously was something. They might have been part of that scene, but there was definitely something more to it, as playing that music.
Yeah. And then follow it through like at the Lords and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it expands, you know what I mean? The Hordes of Babylon, you know what I mean? He plays some straight rock tunes, and it's like he knew what he was doing artistically. He understood music, and he had his vision, and he was focused. He wasn't just stumbling through. He wasn't Sid Vicious,
And the shame is that we don't get to see what he would have done, because it sure seems like he had a lot more to give.
Yeah. Yes, of course. Yeah. That is a shame.
I mean, you imagine Johnny Thunders, Dee Dee Ramone, and Stiv Bators all playing together.
And they got like 2 recorded or whatever it is, 4 songs, and it's like, and then that imploded because there was just too much personality. But
right.
There's difference between irresponsibility and just excessive personality. It's a weird, I don't know, it's a gray area.
You would need major management or somebody who can somehow relate to all of those personalities, and it's not easy.
Yeah. Anyone looking at it as a business would have been extremely frightened.
Yes, for sure. But we've talked a lot about Dead Boys, and I know people are getting turned on to your music, to Dead Boys. But let's talk more about the things you do. You're also a painter, in addition to being a musician. And
That's right.
I know that people can go and view your paintings online. They can buy things as well.
Yeah. That's what I was doing today, is painting a commission. And yeah, I paint portraits of people. I do oil paintings, and those are like more involved, a little more expensive. And then I do a pretty quick business of velvet paintings, mm-hmm. And I'll just do portraits of people, or portraits of their girlfriend or their dog or their cat or whatever, you know what I mean? And it's nice. It's good. It's a good trade.
Were you doing this your whole life?
I've been a painter my whole life. Yeah, right. Definitely.
And so, Jake, tell people where they can see your art. There's a site, right?
Oh, well, come to just check out my Facebook page. I don't really have a website right now to promote it, believe it or not. It's stupid, but I just get it, business like word of mouth. But you can find some on my Facebook page. Just Jake Hout at Facebook, I think. Find it.
Yeah, so people can contact you. Now, I mean, I know.
Message me there, and I'll send you pictures. I don't really have it's word of mouth, and it's like,
Yeah. Now, what about music with the bands before the Dead Boys thing happened? Is that music available? And tell me a little bit about the bands that you're in.
I'm in a band called Altar de Fey. We're death rock. It's like, goth punk, kind of on the harder side of goth punk. And Altar de Fey it's called. And it's current band. We live streamed some stuff since the pandemic started, and we tour and stuff like that. We're like, fairly recognized, It's a more underground, even more niche market, but if you like Lords, you'll like it. You know what I mean? It's got that kind of like spooky, dark stuff. It's a little spookier than Lords, honestly.
Yeah, well, that's cool. I think Lords might have went that direction.
Yeah, and that band also started. I came in late to it. That band started in the 80s and played with Christian Death and all those bands. And it's like, and then reformed in 2012, and I'm in that band currently. And then my old band was called Everything Must Go, and I was in a band called the Divvies, and you can find it on the internet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was reading a little bit about that. Yeah, and so the great thing about music now is, maybe we're not getting rich off of it, but it's people can see your music and find it fast.
Yeah, that is a good thing. I mean, really, I should get more on top of it with my other band, with my earlier bands. My Altar de Fey is current, so you just it's Altar, like ALATR, and you just Google that and you'll find it. But my other bands were like a little bit like internet 1.0, so that web presence is sort of faded, and it's like nowadays it's like, yeah, you can make Instagrams and Facebooks for old bands and get followings going, you know what I mean? It's crazy. It's like I don't so much have the motivation to do that because it's like an old project or whatever, but it people do it, and I should do it. I mean, it's like, you know, get interest in that stuff going too, you know.
Well,
it's
yes, you have
bands that, like, yeah, and it's amazing bands come back and are like more popular now than they were at the time, you know, and kids are thinking of them as like classic bands when they were at the time thought of as more peripheral, or people just straight up didn't hear of them, you know what I mean? And it's like the word, because of the new communication, you know what I mean, capacity, like the kids can find out about it. It's cool. Passes down.
Yeah, and sometimes you hear with the new music, and that's when you realize you want to go back. You know, I'm sure for both of us, we're listening, you know, new music, we're still listening to records that were made in the 70s and 80s, you know.
I mean, I listen to a lot of new music, not very popular music that is new, but there's a lot of great punk bands, you know what I mean? Like the bands that the Dead Boys were playing with, like Ambulance Sniffers, and like, you know what I mean? The Ravagers, Mystery Actions. It's like, you know, younger kids like making really good punk rock right now. It's not exactly the same as the 70s stuff, of course, but it's like, that's good. It's like something else, you know what I mean? And it's still got that spirit to it, you know what I mean? And like, as far as like, it just, the list goes on and on for like darker, like kind of post-punk style bands. There's a huge surgence of it right now.
Yeah.
Like Grotto from Spain, for example, is just like amazing band. Spectres from Vancouver. It's like it, and just, you can just go down the rabbit hole, you know what I mean? And it's like, there's so much good music still being made. It's being ignored, and no one's, you know, by any corporation, and nobody's surprised by that. But there's the upside to that as well. You know what I mean? It goes immediately into the niche market where, you know, people are going to respect and understand it. You know what I mean? And it's a bummer because these talented kids aren't getting radio hits. But it's still there, and it's enough that, you know, these bands get to touring and stuff. Drab Majesty, people are getting careers out of it, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and you make music because you love it and you want to have that legacy. You know, I mean, anyone who does it right isn't going, I'm going to make $1 million. You make this music because you want that music to live. And if you get to tour and do those things, most people tell me I got into music to meet girls, you know, or whatever. You know, it's never, you know, if you're in it to get rich.
Nobody in their right mind ever went at it from that angle. Yeah.
Also, yeah. I don't think bands like the Dead Boys could have ever thought 40-something years later that, you know, we opened for you guys at the Viper Room, and it was sold out. I mean, capacity, and younger people, you know, and loving it. You know?
Yeah.
Did you have any bad experiences? Did anyone throw anything at you or not like that you were doing it?
Like, did crowds react negatively to us at the time?
Did you ever have any?
There were some bad experiences, but they were more like from an excess of enthusiasm.
Okay.
Like people would pull my pants off and stuff their fingers up my butt and stuff like that. You know what I mean? It was, they would rip my clothes off. So there were some experiences that I was like, not, there were fights, but I swear it was always like an excess of enthusiasm. You know what I mean? People would like jump up on stages. Cheetah's 65 years old, and they're like pulling his guitar off of him and like trying to pull his clothes off and stuff. And it was like, oh my God. Were those experiences truly negative? I don't know, but they weren't what we had in mind. Like, you know what I mean? There was any like, yeah, I almost wanted somebody to come and be like, no, dad boys, and try and get, you know what I mean, heckle me so that I could like stand up for myself. Because it's a little small to do it on Twitter. I mean, it's what the president does. It's small-minded bullshit. So it's like I didn't want to do it that way, but like face to face, like, yeah, come here, tell me so, you know. And it's like, but that never really happened, honestly. It was almost a letdown. Like I wish that there had been the vegetable throwing night when I could have, like, you know what I mean? I don't know what I would have done, but probably stripped off clothes and told them all to go to hell, whatever.
Well, you probably, if there were people there, you probably would have won them over right away, because I think anyone who sees you realizes that this is you're paying respect to debaters. You're not trying to be debaters, and yet you have your own really cool thing to bring to the table. You know, first of all,
that I think is, I mean, not to pat myself on the back or whatever, but I do, that, I mean, people told me so, that they came intending to hate me and like more or less just came to complain and potentially throw things, but you know, see a disaster. But yeah, we won them over, and that was cool. That was amazing. You know what I mean? That was a sign we were doing it right, you know?
If they would have tried an 18-year-old kid who really didn't know it and they were trying to create something, I think it wouldn't have worked. Because you knew the band, because you played those songs, because you believed it, and you lived it. Mm-hmm. I think that's why. And you're like I said earlier, your set was to the point. And here's the songs. This isn't going to be, you know, we're getting right to it. And it's hard, and it's what you came to see. And I think you made a lot of people happy, and hopefully you guys will continue to do that.
Yeah. And I got to say, I mean, you know, from my side of being authentic, there's that thing. But I mean, the main point is just Cheetah and Blitz were still, you know, they were grown up and stuff like that, obviously, and grown old, but they were still just the punkest dudes. Oh my God. Like, I couldn't even believe, like, you know what I mean? There was like, I remember right after we first started playing together and we were up in Canada somewhere, little bar, and yeah, we walked outside after the set and everybody's rah! And it's like a freaking riot in there. And Johnny Blitz just like pours a whole beer over top of his head. And I was like, wow, it's freezing out. You know what I mean? It's like freezing by the time it's hitting his head. I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, that's like how punk this dude is. He just like gets off stage, pours beer over his head. Yeah. The guy's 65 or whatever. You know what I mean? It was like, wow, you're still cooler than everybody, Johnny Blitz. It's amazing.
I remember after we played you guys in LA, we went to the Rainbow, and you know, and there's Johnny eating his pizza, and I said to my friend, I go, growing up in New York, I never thought I'd see this guy anywhere, but I certainly didn't expect to see him at the Rainbow eating, you know, pizza. You know, I think having him be part of it did add to a lot of that excitement, because nobody thought they'd ever see that guy again.
Yeah, no. Certainly not. Yeah, it was amazing. He's an amazing guy. He's still a really good friend too. I mean, I have nothing but respect for him, no matter what happens, you know.
Yeah, well, you have your own. You handle things your own way, and you know that's the thing. And for these guys, it can only last. You can only do it for so long, you know. So it's great that you were part of that history and continuing it, because hopefully at some point, you know, we'll be able to do it again. And I'm glad that you told everybody that Cheetah's doing good, because I think there was this growing fear after
Walt. Well, we did a whole. I mean, I feel a little responsible for it, because he had all these hospital bills and all these procedures, diverticulitis and everything like that, and his insurance lapsed and all this stuff. So we did like the GoFundMe, and so naturally everybody's like concerned about him. Then we're like, made an announcement. Yeah, he's all right. And then he like fell off the face of the earth. People are going, what's going on? But
I didn't realize
he's just chilling. He's just like, I think he just doesn't really care about social media right now too much and everything going on with the politics and stuff. I think he said everything he had to say. He was just like, that's what he said to me. He's like, I'm just waiting for it to be over. I mean, you know, the election is one I'm not even paying attention anymore. That's how his attitude was, and he was always like, yeah, posting about it and stuff. And so people were talking to me on, you know, the New York Post called like, is Cheetah Chrome okay, and all this stuff. It was crazy, and I was like, yeah, I mean. He lost his phone, all right?
Well, I mean, to know him is to know that is the kind of thing that would happen to him, you know, and that he survives everything, you know. You know, Sylvain I had talked to maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and he was struggling for a long time, you know, and when he dropped out of the limelight, people knew that he was sick and that he was in a battle. So with Cheetah, he is the kind of guy who would just take a break for a while. So
yeah. I mean, it's Corona. What are we supposed to do? When it's over, he'll give you a call.
But yeah, I went to see. We took him to see a Neil Diamond tribute band here in Vegas.
Yeah,
His kid was like just a baby, you know, and yeah. But I mean, it doesn't get more punk rock than seeing a Neil Diamond tribute with.
Wow.
But yeah, we'll share Cheetah stories off the internet.
Yeah.
Those are the better ones.
Private.
But anyway, Jake, I thank you for doing this. I'm hoping that we turn some new Dead Boy fans on to some of your stuff as well.
Yeah.
And you know, people are home; they got time to listen to some music, and they can check out your artwork too. And
check out Altar de Fey. It's hot. We released an EP this year. You know, right as lockdown was starting. We had just written all these songs, and we've got a home studio. It's like can completely isolate, you know, we're all in different rooms, and we recorded it like that. And we've got a good web presence going. You can see like live streams of us playing. We've got this warehouse down the street that we play at, and it's just us and the film crew, and we shoot videos and stuff like that. And you can check it out. There's some cool stuff. It's called Altar.
Yeah, so Facebook, right? And for those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so then we'll check that out and check out you as well. So, okay, Jake, I really appreciate you joining us, and let's hope we all get back to rock and roll pretty soon.
Yeah. Thanks, Jason.
Okay, thank you.
Cheers.